and welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles, and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. We have an incredible program for you today. Joining us is Efren Olivares, a lawyer with the National Immigration Law Center, which is suing to stop the deportation of Guatemalan children who came unaccompanied to the United States. There's been a lot of back and forth in the courts on this case, as we've been reporting over the last few weeks and months, but we're bringing them in with our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, to get updated. Sandra?
Thanks, Rudy. I am really excited for today's show. Thank you for joining us, Efren. Let me give a little background on you because you are very well known with this case, but you were formerly with the Southern Poverty Law Center, Texas Civil Rights Project, longtime advocate for immigrant rights. I know you from the Rio Grande Valley. This case in particular involves children, Guatemalan children, hundreds rounded up on Labor Day weekend in the dead of night, some flown here to Harlingen, where our studio is, and put on deportation planes that were going to go to Guatemala, but you guys acted to stop them. And that's where I would like for you to tell us what transpired that weekend. What did you do to stop these planes?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sandra. It's great to see you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to discuss this case. So on Labor Day weekend, late on Friday, we started hearing rumors from legal service providers who represent unaccompanied children in their immigration cases that there were rumors that there might be an attempt to deport Guatemalan children en masse that weekend. And that is extremely unusual and unlikely because when you have unaccompanied children, orphaned children, or children who don't have one or both parents in the U.S., who travel to the U.S. by themselves under different circumstances, there's a longstanding law, the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act of 2008, that provides the process for how unaccompanied children should be processed in the system. They are under the custody of ORR, or the Office of Refugee Resettlement. They have a child advocate appointed to them to prevent exploitation and trafficking of those children. There's a very robust process that's in place. So the idea that there might be mass deportations of those children that weekend seemed alarming. We started hearing reports from Guatemalan partners that certain organizations were told to prepare to receive hundreds of children that weekend, right? So we started looking into it and mobilizing. And as we were preparing potential documents for a legal action about this, on Saturday after 11 p.m., right? Keep in mind, Saturday before Labor Day weekend, right? So almost Sunday, the shelters in South Texas and in the Rio Grande Valley and Corpus and San Antonio received a notification from their headquarters telling them to prepare their Guatemalan children to be picked up and be ready to travel to Guatemala within 2 hours. So children were woken up in the middle of the night and told to get their backpack ready and a couple of snacks because they were going to be traveling to Guatemala within 2 hours, right? So at that moment, almost midnight, we ended up filing that lawsuit around 1 a.m. Eastern time, so midnight Central time in Washington, D.C., seeking an emergency order to at least pause the deportations for now until we are able to sort out the legality of these attempts.
Wow. Some of these children actually boarded planes, about 70 of them, am I correct? And at least one plane took off. Is that right?
76 children. So at the time when we got folks on the ground told us that buses with children were arriving at the airport. Children were getting off of buses and onto planes. We did not know how many children there were. It ultimately came out in the litigation. The government confirmed that there had been 76 children on those planes. One of them, I wasn't at the airport, so I don't have personal knowledge. It certainly taxied away from the gate and onto the tarmac and sped up. And then returned a few minutes later. I cannot tell you with precision whether it was airborne and came back or it returned before it became airborne. But one of those planes came extremely close to taking off.
But and nevertheless, these are children, and I know that in the lawsuit they were ages 10 to 17, but on board, their ages were probably even a greater range. And have you talked to these children? What kind of impact did that have on these children being loaded up into planes in the middle of the night?
Woken up in the middle of the night when they, have their immigration hearings, their immigration cases still pending, and they communicate with their immigration lawyers about those cases often, and all of a sudden to be told, be ready to go back to Guatemala in 2 hours, right? Been put on a plane, on a bus, taken to the airport, ordered on a plane, and then told to wait for hours on end, and then get off the plane because a court order that the plane not take off, and then return to the shelter. Some of the children on that plane, Sandra, were on long-term foster care with long-term foster care families. They were woken up at their homes and similarly taken to the airport and went through this entire process. It's extremely traumatic for these children. I personally have not spoken to the children, but their immigration lawyers with whom we work very closely, they have those relationships. They have tried to explain to the children, the situation, that they're not going to be deported, that a federal court ordered that those removals be suspended for now, and they're back at their shelters or with their temporary foster family for now. And we expect them to be there for the duration of the case and let their cases proceed as they normally would, as provided by law.
There's so much to unpack here. For you as a lawyer, are you in Washington, D.C. right now?
I am in McAllen, Texas.
Okay,
yeah,
but it was the court in Washington, D.C. that heard the case, and you were getting reports from immigration lawyers. I mean, children are coming from across the country. I understand some were flown from El Paso. Some were locally here in shelters before they were boarded. The other component is I understand that many of these Guatemalan children don't even speak Spanish. They're indigenous. They might not have really understood, if it was translated into Spanish, what was happening to them, correct?
Our lead plaintiff, LGML, a 10-year-old girl from Guatemala, speaks Mam, an indigenous language. We have other clients who speak a variety of indigenous language, Quiche, Canjobal, among others. In theory, the government has an obligation to provide interpreters for those children. It doesn't always happen. It rarely happens with indigenous languages, unfortunately. Their case managers speak Spanish. Some children speak some Spanish. So that is the way that those children in particular have been communicating. But it doubles down the complexity and the difficulty for indigenous children.
Well, I understand some Portuguese, but I certainly couldn't maneuver through the legal world in that kind of language. So, and I can only imagine a child, having it not being their primary language, trying to understand what's happening to them.
It's difficult enough if it is your primary language, right? To understand the legal technicalities and the process, to make sense of it, much less if it's a second or even a third language for some of the children.
And so you are getting all these notifications. You're scrambling to get a court to hear this. The judge did, play with you on Labor Day weekend. Actually convened and issued the emergency order to stop the deportation. And so, what has happened since then? Where does the case stand now?
So federal courts have emergency phone numbers 24/7, right? And the federal court in DC is no exception. You call that emergency line and typically somebody calls you back. In this case, somebody picked up the phone at 1:30 in the morning and alerted the judge that there was an emergency. And that's how we got the TRO around 4 o'clock in the morning. And the court scheduled a hearing initially for 3 p.m. that afternoon, and then moved it up to 12:30. When the emergency became more imminent as the planes were on the tarmac.
Wow.
The court issued a temporary restraining order that day, that Sunday before Labor Day. And then now that temporary restraining order, which typically lasts 14 days, was converted into what's called a preliminary injunction. And that PI says that no Guatemalan children, unaccompanied Guatemalan children in the custody of the Office of Refugee Resettlement, who do not have a final order of removal or a grant of voluntary departure, none of them shall be deported during the pendency of the case until the court issues another order on the merits of the claims.
And that was in your initial lawsuit, was that none of these children that you were filing, the 10 children you were filing for, had removal orders or voluntary deportation orders, correct? And so they were in immigration court proceedings that were pending, that were coming up. They had not been told, you must leave the country, you are ineligible for asylum, correct?
Asylum or any other relief. Some of them have other types of relief that they are eligible for, but that's exactly right. None of them had a final order of removal.
Okay. And these children now, what happened to them when they were taken off the plane? Do you know where they are? I mean, they obviously, I understand some children were savvy enough to call their lawyers in the middle of the night when this happened. I mean, I can't imagine being 10 years old and thinking that smartly to call a lawyer.
Certainly not our 10-year-old client. Some of the 16 and 17-year-old children, they had a phone number for emergencies and they were able to contact their lawyers. And we had, lawyers from a number of organizations here in South Texas at the shelters throughout the night trying to stop ICE agents or their contractors from taking the children. It was remarkable.
What did they do to try to stop them? I mean, I would just block their cars. I mean, what do you do?
No. So once we received the temporary restraining order at 4:00 in the morning, they printed it out and were showing it to ICE saying a court has ordered that the children not be deported. You cannot take the children. And whether that worked was really varied. Some agents did respect the order and left. Other children insisted that was not something that applied to those particular children and took the children to the airport nonetheless.
So you still had children loaded on planes despite the order, and then that's how this drama continued. Wow, it's just an incredible story, and we are hearing it now from the lead attorney who is representing this case. So this is unedited, this is in his words, and we are getting the full story here on Border Report Live. It's great, Rudy, right?
Absolutely, and we're going to continue the conversation with Efren Olivares right after a quick break. We'll be back in a minute. And welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Joining us today, South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez, along with attorney Efren Olivares with the National Immigration Law Center.
Efren, we're talking about the case involving the Guatemalan children, hundreds of children rounded up and potentially almost deported by the Trump administration. Department of Homeland Security said at the time that the Guatemalan families wanted these children back, but you wrote in court documents submitted, quote, that argument crumbled like a house of cards. Can you explain, I mean, where did they get this idea from and how did you prove otherwise?
When we filed that emergency lawsuit, we attached declarations from our 10 clients confirming under oath that they had not requested to go back, that some of them, our 10-year-old client has one of her parents is dead, the other one abused her, right? That there were multiple instances of children who had not requested to go back, their parents had not requested that they return. So when we showed up in court and the lawyer for the United States of America told the judge that all those children had their parents request that they be back, I was frankly shocked because we had evidence already in the record that was not the case. That lawyer said that it was, quote, outrageous that we had filed this claim and that we were stopping what he called reunifications. Subsequent to the hearing, we were able to get in touch with some of the parents of those children, those who have parents, and they confirmed that they had never requested that their children be returned, that their children are under death threats in Guatemala, that if they return to Guatemala, they will be killed, right? So we were able to dispute the government's representation. And at the preliminary injunction hearing, that was the very first question the judge had for the government lawyer. Is it still your position that all the children that you're trying to deport, their parents requested that they be returned? And in something that I've never seen in my almost 20 years of experience, including suing the federal government for different things, the government had to withdraw that representation. And the attorney said that she could not confirm that that representation was in fact true.
Wow.
I want to be clear what that means, right? Somebody speaking to a federal judge on behalf of the government of the United States made a statement that could not be confirmed to be true.
You know, I'm a mom, just hearing death threats, hearing that one of the children's clients' parents had been abused. I mean, these children have had incredible circumstances happen to them. And you not only got the injunction you mentioned earlier for the 10, and let's just go back, the ages are 10 to 17. Can you what were the actual ages of those 10? I mean, nobody younger than 10, correct?
Among our 10 named plaintiffs, we do not have anyone younger than 10. We have a 10-year-old, 14-year-old, and the rest are either 16 or 17. In the class, though, the class, meaning the entire population of unaccompanied children in ORR custody, which is around 600, and I say around because some of those children have since turned 18, so the number fluctuates as children age out. It varies, right? There are some toddlers in that category, right? So certainly younger than 10, not among our individual plaintiffs, but certainly class members.
So you were able to get the injunction for every unaccompanied child who came to the United States from Guatemala. You mentioned some have just aged up, and they're now adults, so that kind of changes their class. But it went from 10 to possibly 600 children. And where are these children now?
They are in shelters or temporary foster families all over the country. Among our 10 plaintiffs and other declarants, we have children in Texas and in South Texas, in San Antonio, Corpus, the Dallas area, Arizona, California, Pennsylvania, New York, Atlanta, Florida, country, right? Children come to the US and they are assigned to an ORR shelter all over the country. It's a network of facilities that are charged by statute to care for these children and ensure that if they have a family member in the US who can receive them, that they are reunited with that family member. Or in some cases, when they're not eligible for any relief and an immigration judge hears their case to conclusion, some are ordered deported in some cases, right? So that's all we are asking in this case, right? That process be followed. But waking up children in the middle of the night on a holiday weekend is not what the law allows.
Earlier, you mentioned the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act of 2008. Explain how that applies to children here. You said it, and I know, you've studied law for so many years. Put it in terms that we can understand.
Certainly, that is a law that passed in 2008 with broad bipartisan support. And the idea behind that law is that some of the children who come to the US, teenagers or younger, unaccompanied or with a family friend or a relative or who are orphaned, right? This happens. Some children lose both parents in their home country and they have no one else to care for them. So they make the trip by themselves. That those children are especially susceptible to exploitation, trafficking, and other risks. So in order to avoid that, Congress passed the TVPRA, providing a very specific process for how children ought to be processed in immigration proceedings, right? They have a right to a lawyer. They have a right to a child advocate who's an expert in children care. And that child advocate typically drafts what's called a best interest determination. And that's a recommendation to the immigration court about what is in the best interest of this child. Is it to release the child to a sponsor in the US, a relative, a family member? If there's no family, is it to release them to somebody else or place them with a foster family who wants to care for them or return them to the home country? That's also an option, right? And that's very explicitly laid out in the TVPRA. And it's what has happened with unaccompanied children in federal custody since at least 2008, when that law went into place. This is the very first time that any administration of any party is trying to do this and circumvent the TVPRA.
Wow, since 2008. Okay. So, do you feel that these children right now are safe, that they are in a protected environment? I mean, do they feel like they're safe? I know you said you haven't spoken to all the children, but through communications with their attorneys, I mean, what kind of headspace are these children in right now? And even you as the attorney representing them?
We have, just this morning, we got another message from one of the lawyers representing the children that the children are asking, if they are safe, right? Are they going to be
Wow.
deported? Are they going to be deported? Has the court changed the ruling? And again, we confirmed, no, nothing has changed. Those children are safe from deportation, right? They should proceed with their cases normally.
Do you know
Not
why?
just me. So
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
was thinking about this, the second part of your question about the impact this has on us lawyers and advocates. And to me, what I just frankly cannot wrap my mind around is why target children, right? Why go after the most vulnerable? Children who don't have a parent. Why so viciously go after that vulnerable population? I simply cannot understand.
And why South Texas here, Harlingen? Are there more unaccompanied children in this area? Is there any reason for those planes intended to depart from here?
That I don't know. It's hard to say why South Texas. There's a significant number of unaccompanied children here, but so are there near the border in Arizona and California. So it's not clear. There are airports near the border in San Diego as well. So I don't know why South Texas. That would be a question for them. Maybe, yeah, I don't want to speculate. I don't know why.
And last question, because I know we're running low on time, is what's the next step forward with the legal case? What's the timeline here?
Right. So the preliminary injunction was issued on September 17th. And so the deadline for the government to try to appeal that has not come yet, right? So we'll see. They have not appealed that decision, but they might. So that we're in a holding pattern for now to see if they appeal that. If they do not appeal that, then we go back to the district court and continue litigating the case.
When's that deadline coming up?
In 2 months, so November 17th.
Okay, so just before Thanksgiving.
I did want to ask, Efren, because you used the word specifically targeted 2 times in this conversation we've been having. Once when referring to the violence back in their home countries, and once when referring to the United States government targeting them for deportation. Can you kind of explain just really quickly, because we are running out of time, but I did want to ask this, why are children being targeted in their home countries for violence?
Yeah.
So a lot of them, especially the teenagers, when they turn 14, 15, 16, a lot of the gangs in their home countries want to, quote unquote, recruit them to be gang members, or the girls to be, quote, the girlfriend of the gang member. And that is just a euphemism for sexual exploitation by those gangs. So that is how they are targeted. And many of them have no choice but to flee.
Wow.
Well, we appreciate you joining us today, Mr. Olivares. It's another one of those conversations we're having on the program that we wish could go for another 2 or 3 hours, and we hope we can call on you again as these cases develop in the future.
We thank you so much, and we do hope that we can get a follow-up in a couple months.
My pleasure. Happy to be here. Thank you all for following the case, and I'll be glad to come back.
All right. Thank you, sir. And thank you for watching, but we are not quite done yet. Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. And welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Before we go, we have an update on the screwworm issue that we have been talking about. Sandra Sanchez here with us once again. Sandra, we have the screwworm pretty much knocking at our front door with our neighbors to the south. Where are we at on this? Yeah,
the New World screwworm, which is a parasitic fly that can kill livestock and pets and even infect people in 2 weeks, is another case was spotted in Mexico in Nuevo León. That's a northern Mexican state. It is about 120 miles from Rio Grande City, it's basically south of Starr County. And this week I spoke to Congressman Henry Cuellar, and he said that during the government furlough, USDA inspectors tasked with watching out for this screwworm to make sure it doesn't cross our border have actually been furloughed and are not working.
Because we have a shutdown right now. Those flies are not going to stop. So during the shutdown, the money is there. But remember, some of those folks are not working right now. So that's what we're concerned about.
it kind of shocked me when he said that, Rudy. You know, I was like, whoa, 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 let's walk this back a little bit. We don't know how many inspectors. Interestingly, they still are inspecting for fever tick. We are a fever tick quarantine area, and that has a great impact on cattle and livestock down here. But if that screwworm crosses the Rio Grande, then basically these cows are not getting out of Texas. They're not getting north, and people who eat meat are, you know, going to have a hard time trying to get it. So, you know, it could cost $1 billion to the Texas cattle industry.
Yeah, and the cattle industry already, you know, high prices everywhere because of the lack of water in so many of these big cattle states. And so, you know, it could only make, you know, dinner a little more expensive for all Americans across the country.
I'm a vegetarian, but I understand the need, and it is a big threat. This parasite, we did eradicate them in the 50s, so in the 60s. Let's see if we can do it again.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your reporting, Sandra, on this and the conversation with Mr. Efren Olivares from the National Immigration Law Center. That does it for us today. Have a good one.